Hello everyone, I'm just going to do a quick video on in-camera double exposure. I did one this morning of Arthur, who's got hiccups at the moment. Yes. And some flowers, and a couple of people have asked me how I've done it. So whilst I don't claim to be an expert in double exposure, I just thought it might be useful if I showed you how I did the one this morning. So for the double exposure I did this morning, I used my Canon 5D Mark 3 camera, which is the camera I use mostly, and I had my Sigma 35mm 1.4 lens attached, and I'm just going to quickly show you on the back of the camera the way that I set it up to do the double exposure. So the first thing that I did is press this little button here. It's like a paintbrush and a rectangle. So if you press on there, it comes up with picture style, and you just scroll across to the second one, which is multiple exposure, and click set. And at the moment it's just default set to disable, so you just want to click on that and click on function control. So that's on for me to be able to create one multiple exposure. Here there are different options. I use additive for this particular double exposure. Number of exposures is 2, which is right. Save source images, yeah, I always do, so that I can go back and I've got more choice, which will make more sense later on. And then I just go down to select image for multiple exposure and click on there, and then you go through and you'll see, just need to find the image I had of Arthur on his own initially. Which was this one. So what you do then is you click on that image. So I chose this one because there's a lot of sky behind him and not much else interfering with the image. So now that I've selected that, we'll go outside and I'll show you what you do next. So now what you want to do is click on the image that you want to use for your multiple exposure. So this is the image I shot of Arthur on his dad's shoulders, so that he's sort of silhouetted, semi-silhouetted against the sky. I didn't want him to be completely silhouetted because I wanted to retain some of the detail in his face, which you'll see in the final image. And the aim of shooting this image is to try and blow out the sky as much as you can behind your subject, so that you've not got much interfering with the silhouette. So here I used shutter speed 800 and I had my aperture at 3.2, just because it was quite a difficult way to shoot him because he was moving a lot. He was on his dad's shoulders, he was excited, so I knew he'd been moving in and out of focus, and I was shooting up towards the sky, which is why he's at the angle that he's at, because like I say, I wanted to get as much of that sky behind him as I could, so it was a nice clean background. So you just click set, select that, and then what you want to do is click on start stop here to put your camera into live view. So then you can see there's the image of Arthur there, and I'm just going to walk over to a few different areas in the garden and show you what things could potentially look like if you were to choose them as your image to merge with the one of your subject. So what you'll see then is sort of just a faint version of the image that you want to merge another image with, so you can just barely see Arthur there, and you can see already in live view that you can see the grass behind him, so you could shoot that if you wanted to. What tends to work better is fill in your subject's silhouette, so where his face is there, with something quite dark and solid, or at least this is what I've found anyway, and then having the rest of the image quite clean again. So things that I would tend to use would be so I'll show you the conifers just at the back of our garden. So something like this would work quite well because you'll be able to blow the sky out behind the conifers again, like you did with your first image, meaning that the bit that fills the image of Arthur will be busied with the conifers, but the area surrounding it will be clean because we'll be able to blow our sky out again when we shoot this. So again, you want to be looking at keeping your settings dependent on the light that you're working with, at something that will blow that sky out and just keep the detail of the trees that you're shooting with. So something like this, for example, hopefully you can see my camera screen well enough just to see that the bulk of the conifer is filling Arthur's face, which will create a silhouette, and then the rest is just going to trail off. And if we blow the sky out enough, so if I just pull my shutter speed down a little bit. That should blow the sky out. And I've got my aperture at around 4, I think, just to make sure I've got the detail of the trees. And then you can just mess around with sort of shooting that. So you should, let me just spin this round, you should be able to see there that we've got something that's okay. And obviously I played around a lot with the one I did with the flowers earlier in Photoshop, and I'll show you how I did that in a moment. But you can see the effect that it gives. And the thing with double exposures in camera is they never look perfect really, or this is only my experience I guess, in camera, and they do require some tweaking because you want to get rid of this blue sky here that's still come through where it's not quite fully blown out, and this bit at the bottom needs to be neatened up as well. But you can see the effect that it has with the conifers trailing off from the silhouette, and that's the sort of look I try to go for. So I did this image with the help of my partner Paul, so he was holding the flowers this morning. So I got this bunch of flowers, lovely flowers, and we fanned them out so that there was plenty of variation, and also so we got some of the flowers trailing down Arthur's body as well as off from where his hair would be. And I asked him to hold them up as high as he could in the sky like this, and then from there I took quite a low angle and shot upwards into the sky again, and the aim again was to blow the sky out so that there wasn't anything sort of interfering with the image. And I just asked him to keep moving their positions so that they were filling the image as I wanted them to while I played around with it in live view. So this is what the image looked like in camera once I'd photographed the flowers against the sky. So you can see it's the start of something, but it's not quite perfect yet. So we just need to clean that up in Photoshop, and then I'll bring it back into Lightroom just to make some final adjustments to contrast and certain colours. So I'll just take this into Photoshop. So as you can see, I've taken this image into Photoshop now, and I'm just going to show you how I cleaned that up in here before I took it back into Lightroom to make final adjustments and to really make this image pop. So the first thing I did was created a copy of my layer, so I was working on a duplicate layer. And then I took this tool over here, so the spot healing brush tool, or on my computer you can just press Ctrl and J and that would open that tool up for you. And it's set to, the mode is normal, and it's set to content aware. So what I want it to do is recognise the content around it, around these patches that we want to eliminate, which is the white, and I want it to take that and almost just clone this out to replicate what surrounds it. So I'll just go ahead and do that. So then, as I come close to Arthur's face, I'm going to zoom in, just using the magnifying glass here. Take that in because this is a little bit messy here and I'd rather get rid of that. So I'm still using my spot healing tool, but I'm just going to make that a bit smaller. This is doing an okay job. Removing those bits. I don't want in the image. So where it starts to get a little bit closer, because we're using content aware, it's picking up his hair, so it's not necessarily eliminating everything I want to eliminate. So what you might do is take your clone stamp tool instead, and just select a source area, so just this white area, and just go over these areas, stamping the white over the bits that are a little bit messier than you'd like them to be. It doesn't matter to me anyway if it's a little bit rough, this image, because of all the foliage used. is a little bit raw anyway, so for me that's fine. You might spend longer doing that, and that's obviously up to you. And then you just want to zoom back out again and just see where there are other areas. So around here, this might be a job for your clone stamp again, so you don't want to be here forever working with a spot healing brush. So I just take quite a big area and just start working my way over that. A little bit there that I can see. I am doing this quite roughly. When I did it earlier I spent a lot more time, but I'll not bore you by spending forever doing this. And you can see here just some areas that need clearing up as well, so just work on those until you're happy with it. Bits here. I'm not going to worry too much about this down here because I'm going to crop a lot of that out in Photoshop, and then some of this in Lightroom, sorry, and then some of this might just be personal preference about where you want sort of the trailing to stop in the image, where the flowers are trailing off. So you might want to take some of this out close to his skin, so that's a nice cleaner line. But I'm just going to leave it there for the sake of this tutorial, otherwise we'll be here all day. So I'll just zoom out and show you what that looks like now. So already that looks much cleaner than it did before. So if we go back to where we were in the beginning, we can see we were there. Now we are here. So once I was happy with that, I opened up a curves layer, which I usually do, whether I do that in Lightroom or Photoshop, just to play around with exposure, shadows, highlights until I'm happy with the contrast in my image. You can see you can pull blacks down a little bit to add a little more pop to your image. You can pull overall exposure down, etc. I think I'm going to do most of this in Lightroom, but you can see I've just pulled blacks down a little bit, which has added a little bit more contrast. I also opened a hue saturation layer and just played around with some of the colours to make them pop a little bit more. So if you were to click on yellows and take saturation up, you can see that's altering how bright that sunflower is. I did quite like the softness of the image, so I didn't oversaturate it. I just worked a little bit to make certain areas pop. Same with greens, just brought a little bit more green into it, but not much. And that was about all I did in here, so I'm just going to take it back into Lightroom now. So I'm just going to save it. So we're back in Lightroom now with the adjustments that I made in Photoshop. So from here, I just find it a more simple tool than Photoshop just to make final tweaks. And I always tend to bring my images back into Lightroom just to make final adjustments no matter what I've done in Photoshop. So I'm just going to bring contrast up a little bit. I'm going to bring whites down a little bit. I think I prefer it a bit more muted rather than super white in the background. I'm going to bring clarity up quite a lot for this image, so that's really high for me. I wouldn't usually work at that sort of level of clarity, but I feel like it works with this particular image to bring out some of that detail and to really make the image pop. I'm going to pull vibrance up as well, and also pull saturation up a little bit more. So you can see this is really starting to look like the final image did now. And then I just cropped it until I was happy with it. So I pulled it up to about there, so it was a cleaner silhouette, and I just moved it over. I was trying to get him as much on this line here, just working with rule of thirds as much as I could. So it's about there. And that's really starting to look like the final image now. So if I just refer to my final image, this is the final one. And this is this one. So I'm going to bring whites up actually. And I'm going to bring highlights up. And I'm going to bring shadows down. So that brings down the area of detail that's in his face, which is all the foliage. And you can play around with curves in here, you can play around with saturation as well. So you can bring the greens back out again, take the luminance down, which would make the greens more contrasty, but I quite like the softness, so I'm not going to mess with that too much. And then the yellow, you can play with the hue, so you can make it a warmer yellow, you can keep it a true yellow, or you can mess around with it up here so it becomes a little bit more of a sort of citrusy yellow. And just keep playing with those until you're happy with them. But this is just about where I ended up. And that's it really. I hope you found this useful. You can try all sorts of different things. It's really fun to play around with. Good if you're feeling like you're in a bit of a creative rut and you want to try something new and push yourself a little bit more. I've also started playing around with a black and white version of this, which is by no means perfect there, but I'll work on that in Photoshop and clean this area up, and I think it'll be quite nice in black and white as well. There was some with the conifers that I took, which I want to work on. I don't like them as much as the one that I picked in the end, but you can see there's something there, and it's all a learning process. I've tried these several times and this is the first time I've really been super pleased with one, so I just wanted to share that with everybody. Okay, thank you. Bye.